Mike. Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1427 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. The Advantaged Investor Podcast from Raymond James Canada. Valuable perspective for Canadian investors who want to remain knowledgeable, informed, and focused on long-term success. And Ridley Funeral Home. Pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his Toronto Mic debut is Dave Rave. What a name. Love it, man. Nice to meet you, Dave.
Huh?
How you doing?
I'm so glad to be here, man. I'm happy. What a great show you have, and to be part of it is exciting.
Okay, let's slow down here, Dave Rave. I need some elaboration. You've heard an episode of Toronto Mic.
Yeah. Well, your show is well known, and people. I think people go to it because you tackle a lot of different subjects, and I call it the current that you put the thermometer in today, right?
Well, and also, cut through all that PR bullshit that's flying around. Like, let's go straight to the talent, straight to the artist, and let's have a long-form conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I got Dave Rave in my basement, and I want to celebrate that. Okay, I got it's called Burst. It's an IPA from Great Lakes Brewery. You have
Burst.
a Canuck Pale Ale.
Ooh, this is really good.
Okay, but you got to crack it in front of the mic. Dave. This is
a
a serious operation here.
Okay, here we go.
Go ahead.
Oh,
in stereo.
That sound.
Right, so cheers to you, Dave Rave, man.
Cheers being here. Thank you.
And did you come from the Hammer?
Yeah, I came from the Hammer today. I'm not that bad considering we had a Super Bowl party last night in Oakville. Okay. And it was such a good deal that I could have been more intoxicated than I did get, but everybody around me certainly did. But I knew I had to be good for today.
The game went to overtime. They have the new overtime rules, so it's like once you got to get a grasp on this. So both teams are going to have a possession no matter what. And I thought it was a thrilling end. That was quite the game. And when you look back, that extra point that was missed
made a big
by
difference.
San Francisco. This game doesn't go to overtime if they hit that extra point.
Well, number one, they finally got to what the CFL already do. Because a CFL, it was everybody gets the ball. And when they used to just do it, if you got a field goal, football's not like hockey or basketball, which is a back and forth sport. It's a possession sport, right? So I never understood the NFL, this amazing billion-dollar industry, not get something so simple. Right. And us Canadian league, based on thousands, got it right. So I'm glad they finally did, first of all. It made the game more fun.
Absolutely.
And fair.
Now, okay, you mentioned CFL, so I'm going to jump to a question. So there's a whole whack of great questions for you.
Sure, yeah.
This is sort of a teenage head deep dive, but it's more than that because you've got other great stuff on your belt.
No, but we can talk about anything.
Okay, this is going to be amazing. I'm very excited. And Mike Rogotsky.
Yep.
Love the Hamilton content. I hear from Mike, and I want to shout out Jake the Snake and all these cats who, like, when I do and I got a question coming up from Hamilton Mike. What a great community this Hamilton, man. When I have an episode with somebody, I don't know, be it Steve Paikin or Tom Wilson from Jump Cows, who's the unofficial mayor of Hamilton,
He certainly is.
When I have these episodes, Stephen Brunt.
Oh, Stephen's awesome.
Damian Cox is from Hamilton. He'll talk it up. So when I do these Hamilton episodes, the Hamilton contingent comes out. Rogotsky says, "Can you ask Dave what's his favorite Hamilton tie cat moment?"
Oh, well, you know what? I'm going to have to be selfish here. we got to play the Labor Day game, halftime show. And I think as a young lad when my dad in 1968 got us season tickets, which I dreamt, the year after they won the cup, and they didn't have a good year that year. They did after that. They won in 67. So, but to be there with my boys, with Gordy and Stevie and, Gene, and I know Frank, how many games did I watch with Frank over the years? It was magic. It's like one of those things you go, when you're a little boy, you go, wouldn't it be great to be able to play at this place? And it happened, man. And I think that's probably one of the greatest moments in my life, really, because it's a childhood
What
dream.
year was this?
That was just before the pandemic, 2019.
Well, okay.
So, and the little bit of the drama before that. There's a doc on Teenage Head,
course.
Picture My Face.
Yes.
And Gord was suffering, from illness and not feeling well. So we didn't even know if he was going to make it. We that whole summer we cheerleaded him into health, and he made it, and he played stunningly good, which I'm proud of him. He did it,
My heart aches. I know we're going to jump around a bit here,
sure.
Dave, and we're going to get back to this.
Yeah,
but
we can talk. We don't have to have any order.
Good, thank you, because it'd
No
be impossible
order.
to keep this chronological.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Gord and Gord Lewis, and just my heart hurts when I think about the tragic end of Gord Lewis. Like, what an absolute tragedy, not only to the Hamilton community, but Teenage Head fans across this country.
Yeah.
Just do you mind sharing a little bit about Gord?
Absolutely. Well, I know Gord since, believe it or not, since the first grade. And we both went to Catholic school together in Hamilton. And he came, I still remember, he came in late in the year because he was from a different part of Hamilton. We were all the West End. And he came in, and I always remember because he got fresh money, because he used to get money in the beginning of the year. And I always wrecked everything. I lost everything because that's just my nature. I still do. But he, of course, was very neat and kept everything. So I remember being jealous that he got this new fresh money. And but yeah, from the beginning, he was a competitive, amazing guy who was unique. He was quiet in one way, but he had the sportsman mentality of competition, and he didn't want to lose at anything he did. I remember playing chess with him, and if I was going to beat him, he'd just knock the board off. I played. We were altar boys together. We played baseball together, hockey. He was actually, I was talking to a fellow friend of ours. We all grew up together, Mike Condren, the other day, and they played hockey in Boston, and the Boston Bruins were interested in him in 1970, maybe to be, as a goalie. So that's how good he was. Wow. That's how good he was. He was like Roger Crozier in the days of the toe-saved goalie. And the one time I was a defenseman, the one time I was going to finally score a goal, he put the toe save out and stopped it. Which he wasn't going to let me score a goal. Are you kidding? I bugged him with it all my life.
What is it with rock stars in this country and being a goaltender?
Yeah,
I've heard from more rock stars, right?
Yeah.
And who is it? Oh, Brother Bill from CFNY was just on the program, and he was talking about the time. No, he scored a hat trick, but he didn't know who the goalie was because they were wearing a mask. And he's in the dressing room, and he sees, the goalie's Gord Downey.
Was he a goalie too, Gordy?
Gord Downey was a goalie. He wrote that Lonely End of the Rink. That's right. About his personal experience.
That's right. Those boys were heavy hockey guys. Even and they were Boston. He was a Boston.
Harry Sinden was his godfather, right?
Wow, I didn't realize that.
I think so. And I think in that Courage video, he's wearing this Bruins sweater,
Bruins man,
which pissed off a lot of us. But then we found out Harry Sinden was his godfather, so he came by it honestly. But there's definitely like a correlation between like the Canadian rock star and being a goaltender.
Well, you know what? It was weird because in the 60s, as kids, we were, I always had one ear on music and one eye on sports. And then somewhere along the line, music just took over. But it didn't mean we didn't like sports. But now you can keep them together. At that point, you sort of had to separate them. You were either a jock or a cool guy, a sports music guy,
right?
And we ended up going into the music end. And but then in the '80s, when we'd be on the road, me, Frank, and Gord, always, whenever we were playing out west, we'd always go see a game because we would be only going on 11, and the games were always at 7. So we get to see the Jets, the Oilers, Saddle Dome. We went to see the Canucks. We always got to see games. We saw the great Gretzky era.
City of Champions, man.
Yeah, so we became in the 80s. We became back to real big music fans. Became okay. We Frank would tape the Leafs game, and somebody would always tell him the score. Don't tell the score.
I think it was Ron McLean came over and told me, like, all of the Canadian rock stars, they wish they were musicians. Like, and all the Canadian rock stars wish they were hockey players, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to be athletes. And all the athletes wanted to be rock stars.
Yeah, I got to play the Cops Coliseum Rockers versus the players, right? The Leafs alumni, and
Sure.
I had no idea that I was being picked to play the game, and so I'm practicing, and then I finally go, who are we playing? And he goes, Leafs alumni. I almost cried. I went, I can't play. I'm not that good. I haven't played enough. But they said, don't worry about it. So I stuck on right wing and played with Andrew Cash. Remember,
It was politics. Yeah, of course.
Andrew's a great centerman. He was fast.
I'm a big Skydiggers guy.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had,
I was in Hamilton to see Skydiggers in December at
there
the
you go.
theater, which it'll come to me in a minute.
I think my line was Cash with Rick Emmett on left wing, and I was on right wing. And we had the three brothers that played.
Hanson brothers?
No, well, they're like the Hanson brothers. Strange Animal.
Gowan.
The Gowan brothers were first class.
Okay,
First class.
You just you're name dropping a whole bunch of FOTMs here, friends of Toronto Mike. I just want you, Dave Rave, to know you're now an FOTM.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you.
I gotta say, so I'm listening to you in the headphones now for the past. We're really early in this up, but like. Okay, you're a Hamilton guy, but you got an accent, right? Like, where's this affection coming from?
Here it is.
Yeah.
And in 1989, I left the boys. I said, okay, I realized it was time. And I said, I don't want to be teenage all my life, but not against being teenage, just saying that I knew that there's a point in my life where I went, I'm either going to stick with this band forever,
right,
or I'm going to go with not greener pastures, but different pastures. And New York City, a possibility came. And so I took it. With a fellow Canadian, a guy named Gary Piggold, a Mississauga boy,
right?
Actually, but really poor credit. Let's say poor credit, right?
Shout out to poor credit.
Yeah, he's not really. So Gary and I accidentally got into New York City at a new music seminar. A friend of his, another fellow Canadian, knew of an empty place that they needed to be taken care of. So I stayed there till a very long time, till about.
So you got a little Jack Armstrong going on.
Yes,
he's got that Brooklyn thing going.
Yeah, so for 2 years, up 2 years before, when I rejoined Teenage Head, when Steve asked me back, Steve said, you can stay in New York. We're not playing. We don't play that much.
Right.
Well, fortunately, we ended up doing a lot of things together up to the pandemic. And we put out 4 records, reissues. Like we reissued the first album, Steve Kane that won us. And we did a greatest hits called Fun Comes Fast. Then they reissued Tornado. And now recently we just did... Live at the Heat Wave, and also the reissued. I'm
going to ask you about that.
The Marky Ramone album with the Teenage Head. So, as a result, I ended up staying here.
Okay.
And coming back to the Hammer.
Okay. Listen, glad you're back. Glad you're back
Thank
on the
you.
Hammer. I'm glad you're here. I feel like this is all just a pre-game show, man.
Yeah.
I want to thank somebody. Nancy Malik. Do you know Nancy Malik?
Oh, I was going to thank her too. We're Jigs Coke here. Yeah, I love Nancy. She's amazing.
Okay, so Nancy wrote, she's like, have you had, would you have Dave Rave on? And I'm like, what, I have Dave Rave on? Like, she basically connected us.
She was amazing that way.
Yeah,
Thank
you, Nancy.
We reconnected at the Andy Kim show. And Ralph Alfonso has this band called The Damn Truth. And Ralph was coming into town, and he said, hey, I'm in town. We're doing the Andy Kim show, Damn Truth. I went, cool. And then anyhow, that day, he said, do you want to go? Because I can, because of Nancy. He told Nancy that I was talking to her. She invited me to come to the show, and it was a fantastic show. And Tom played, and Damn Truth were amazing, and we got to see Rush, lead guitar player, man.
Alex Lifeson.
Yeah, like Alex play.
Envy of None? That's his band now, right?
Yeah. Well, he was playing with Andy, so it was a great night.
Steinberg
backstage. We hooked up and talked to Nancy, and we said, hey, how you doing? And it's great. We reconnected. It's beautiful.
Okay, this is all beautiful. Now, Dave Rave, look, I got to see your driver's license. Can't be your real name, right? So what is your real name?
My real name, well, I was today in getting my blood work, and it did say, my health card said DeRoche.
Okay.
He's a Frenchman from New Brunswick. My dad was a New Brunswicker.
Sure. Okay, like Acadian, right?
Acadie, oh yeah, Acadie.
Okay,
Yeah.
beautiful. So KK, longtime radio personality, who sadly, she tells me she left radio she said it was too toxic, radio. I thought it was sad when I got this note from KK.
Wow.
Radio's too toxic. She's going to try to find a gig outside of the industry, but she just wanted to write in and say, no questions, Dave, just declaring lots of love and support over the years. So
fantastic.
that's from KK.
Well, radio at night, right? I used to watch TV during the Gulf War, and at night I would listen to the Yankees when I was living in New York on WABC, and then after that, the stuff that was said on radio could never be said on TV. And I thought, it's interesting the difference between when people see something talking versus listening. And because I'd hear stuff like politicians and different people saying things, I thought radio is way more interesting still today than television. Because television, Bill Maher got left. He had to leave his members show on ABC.
Politically incorrect.
Yeah, for minor stuff compared to what you would hear on radio. Like the opinions were broad and from the right and left.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. So radio, I always think, is when you just hear voices, it's way more challenging and cutting edge.
Susan Day, and I hope I'm saying it right. DE is how the last say. We're going to start. We got to talk about teenage head. So the question from Susan is, what's a teenage head? Okay.
Okay.
But let's get to the origin story, and then I'll chime in with all these questions along the way. But basically, tell us about forming teenage head. I guess you're going back to the mid-70s.
Well, the thing about it is that I always had an ear for music, and it was in my family. So when I was in grade 9, I would be talking to a fellow friend of mine, Ralph Nicole, and Frankie Venom, who was then Frankie Kerr, was in row 1. I was in row 4. And after about 2 months of me and Ralph always would talk about music, the current stuff, hey, you're the new Elton John record. Frank came over quietly just before Christmas saying, I play drums. Would you like to get together and jam? So this quiet guy on row 1 finally spoke. And I went, okay. So I grabbed a couple of buddies, and we all went to his house just after that Christmas that year.
Right.
It was really cold. And that was sort of the beginning of the relationship of Frank and I and the band's, not yet Teenage Head, but just us playing together. And Gordy, I knew him all along. He was playing a little more, like he started taking guitar around. I remember showing him something. I was taking a Mel Bay guitar book, and I showed him a couple of my exercises, and he learned pretty quickly. So he was playing, Steve was playing. Nick had an older brother who was actually really, really good and played like Allman Brothers in real music, like all that stuff that was hard to play. So Nick was already playing. Me and Frank were already playing, but Steve and Gord were sort of jamming, the two of them. And I think somewhere along the way, everybody eventually connected. I think around 74, that's why this is the 50th anniversary.
Wow.
And Steve talks about it. But here's a crazy thing.
Yeah.
By the way, it's Steve Marshall's birthday today. So I talked to him, and he said, hello.
Okay, hello to Steve. Happy birthday.
Yeah,
there's a question for you about him. Okay, it's about the name. So you gave him, he's got 2 last names. What's going on there?
Okay, I asked him that. I said, I was looking on.
Okay, but let me give credit to Dawn Sev, who says, Dave might not have the answer to this, but why does bassist Steve Mann also go by Steve Marshall?
Well, I have the answer now, because I asked him. I said, Steve, I got this question. This might be the question asked. So he goes to me, that was my middle name. I think he was named after an uncle of his or something, Steve Marshall.
So Marshall's his middle name, and sometimes he just goes by that moniker.
Steve, I think showbiz, we all sort of had different names, right? Gordy
Says
was
Dave
Gordy,
Reed.
Gordy was Lazy Legs Lewis, Frankie Venom, right? Mr. Kerr, Mr. Venom, and he got that name because I think Nick's mom said Frank always was, very, very cheeky, and he'd say something cheeky that that mums and dads wouldn't maybe always appreciate, and she goes, Frankie, your tongue's venom.
So what's Nick's last name?
Sipanitz.
Okay, Stepanitz. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically it's you, Frank Kerr, who would go by Frankie Venom, like you just said there, Gord Lewis, Steve Mann, and Nick Stepanitz.
Yeah, all of us played in various variations.
And what are you doing
together.
with the band? Like, what do you like? Frankie's lead singer, right?
Well, not yet.
Not yet.
And then
Okay.
but I was already playing and doing stuff after me and Frank. Eventually, we were in a band together. we all got into different people, and like some. Frank stayed playing with Mike. We had so many guitar players that the band that me and Frank initially started that I eventually left. Basically, Steve and Gord got Frank to come in and play drums with them. They never really had a proper lead singer. So I would go in and sing when they needed a show. Even Nick, before he was drumming, he would come and sing. They had different people that came. So that's really the gritty of it. And then eventually, Frank, to get somebody who was always in the band, Frank flipped over. I said to Gord, Frank's actually a really good singer, because I had a friend of mine gave me a book called Beatles Songs in 3 Chords.
Okay.
So that was like 1971, and it was like 100 songs, and it was just all the easiest chords, not the right ones, but the easy ones. So Frank would always pick up the book when we would take a break and sing Beatles songs or Dawn McLean songs, whatever, American Pie. He would always pick up the guitar and sing. So I knew he could sing. So me and him sort of singing
so you
together.
start, maybe you're kind of on leads at first, and then Frankie takes over leads.
But
you mentioned you leave, so this is where I get confused. So you're
Why
there,
did I-
you found...
Well, really,
it
was really Steve. See, the idea of Teenage Head is Steve and Gord, because they were playing together, and me and Frank and Nick were in different bands playing. So the real core of that band is those two, which I'm only learning now.
Really? Okay,
Me and Steve talked about this week. So the core of the band is those two. That what separates Teenage Head from everything else that we were doing. So we all were stepping in, and eventually Frank came in. I would step in,
right.
Nick would come in, and eventually Nick did join the band full time. I'd be there for recording sessions and playing, but I wasn't full time in the band in the beginning. I would be playing rhythm guitar along with Gordy, because they had another rhythm guitar player, but they let him go. His name was Steve Parks.
Right.
So it's that, you know what? And the thing
he goes to Simply Saucer.
Yes. Now the thing about all this stuff, it sounds now convoluted, but really all it is that we all lived in the same neighborhood, and I would take one day, I would take a bike there, ride there,
right.
or Gordon and Frank would come over on their bikes in front of my house and say, hey, we need you, we're recording, coming down. So it wasn't never complicated. It was just people like Gordon lived around the corner from me. We all knew each other. So it wasn't like now,
Gotcha.
and it wasn't like some big. It was just, okay, what are you doing tomorrow? We got to shake. We're doing a street dance. Why don't you sing? Okay, I'm in.
Do you remember the first gig for Teenage Head?
Yeah. It was a street dance right on Hillview, which where Frank lived. And then Steve even wasn't there, because Steve went and was a roadie. And Steve always, like, I think somewhere in his collective consciousness, even though him and Gord started the band, he wasn't at the first gig. But they did do goofy stuff. They goofed off in that before
right.
that. But I think the official gig was we're sitting and playing at Hillview at a street dance. And we started off with the song Search and Destroy by Iggy Pop.
Stooges, yeah.
Yeah, we did Teen Generate, Mystery Girls by the Dolls, California Sun by the Dictators. Because Ramones hadn't existed yet. Ramones didn't exist yet. Well, they did, but we didn't know.
Right. CBGBs or something.
Yeah, Raw Power. All that stuff was going on. What else song? Chatterbox by the Doors. Yeah, Chatterbox. I say you squawk a lot. Come on, give me some. See, that at that point, it was sort of like music that nobody liked, and which I am always attracted to that in a way. Even though I liked the conventional rock like everybody else, I was a big Badfinger fan. I loved, all the stuff that was going on,
right?
The Faces, but this music, which was sort of on the outskirts, was sort of cool music. So I didn't mind it when I'd go to Gord's house and listen to it. They were outside the box.
And where does the name
Teenage Head come
Teenage Head come from?
Okay, here's a crazy little story. And when I was young, I used to go to buy magazines. I went to the smoke shop in our neighborhood, and I saw this really cool psychedelic. And I knew Rolling Stone magazine,
right?
And I would get that once in a while. But then I saw this really cool magazine with a psychedelic cover of a guitar on it, and I went, "Wow, that's really, really cool." And on the back was pictures of the Flamin' Groovies, and it said, "If you subscribe to this magazine, you can get Teenage Head, the album by the Flamin' Groovies." Now here's the crazy.
Clarify there,
now
yeah.
here's the crazy thing.
Yeah,
I just thought it was such a cool cover and cool articles. I didn't know who Lester Bangs was at the time, but there was cool articles. I buy the magazine, drive on my bike over to the Swings. Now, there's the Swings. Think about this. Gord, and there was a couple of girls that used to hang out.
Yeah.
Grade 8, right?
Yeah.
Girls
Grade
hang out
8.
at the it's right by the school, the Georgia Allen. Gord comes riding over because he knows there's girls there too on his bike, and he goes, "Hey, what's going on?" I go, "I just bought this new magazine called Cream." And Gord looked at it and went, "That's really cool." He went and bought the magazine too. Then he comes back and goes, "I really like that name, Teenage Head. It's such a cool name on the back of the cover."
Right.
And so I think so grade 9, he already was thinking of that name. He had some other names for the band, maybe the Jets and a few other things, but that name Teenage Head stuck in his head. And now if you remember, the name Head in those days means with guys who used to hang out together. He's a good head. He's a good head.
No, I don't know this. This is why I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Like, was it obvious, the connotation we'd think of it today?
No, that was
no
not,
fellatio
that didn't even
connotation.
Nothing to do, because it wasn't called that then. It was called a good head. It was head shops.
Okay.
It was all to do more with drugs,
Right.
Head shops. And they were like poster shops with psychedelic stuff. So a Teenage Head was a young dude who was ahead and into cool music, right? So it changes now, as time goes on. It's like the Beach Boys, like Teenage Head, because he's a teenage head.
Right.
And don't forget, in rock and roll, the song Teenage Head by the Flamin' Groovies is about these guys who don't want to go to Vietnam. Right, so I'm a monster. Dun, 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 I got a revved up teenage head. Dun, 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 teenage monster, California born and bred. And then it's got Rotten Air in Vietnam and all that stuff. So the Flamin' Groovies were cool guys who never got big, but they were a cool band.
Fucking amazing.
Yeah.
So Dave Rave, Dave Rave, I love this fucking name.
Yeah.
Question came in on the live stream, by the way.
How did I get it?
Well, how'd you get it? Because
I'll tell you.
I know, like off the top of my head, I can think of 3 Dave Raves. Like these guys are all just busted. Because I'm thinking of Dave Rave Ogilvy, for example.
Yes, he's my main other raver.
Okay, yeah. So you two compete for like SEO and Dave Rave.
And there was Dave Rave McIntosh.
Okay, who I have a note from.
Yeah.
I almost zoomed with. He's in the UK, I think, or something.
Is that where he is now?
Yeah, I got a note from him on Facebook, and I almost booked him, and then he wasn't feeling well, and we're going to try to get this going again.
Oh, you got to get him. I'd like to hear with McIntosh, because he had that cool magazine, Nerve.
Okay, you know what? Gear Joyce, if you're listening, Nerve...
Yes.
Dave Rave and I have this Facebook connection. We Facebook message. He's a big fan of Toronto Mike. And it was wild because that conversation was happening around the time I was kind of talking to Ogilvy, Dave Rave. Yeah. And then, then you come into the picture and I'm like, oh, there's so many Dave Raves.
Yeah, those are the 3 main ones. Hey. I mean, there's other Dave Raves that we don't know about, but leave them alone. Yeah, here's the key thing. My Dave Rave came from, picture my face, and here's what happened. In 77, Teenage Head are going to do their first single. And Gord, I can't remember, we're in grade, because we're in college now. And Gord says to me, he goes, because we always, Gord didn't want another guitar player. He got rid of Steve. And the reason why was just simple. He saw the Ramones.
Right.
And it's not that simple. And I think in 76, when he saw the Ramones, he went, that's what I want. And Gord's a forceful personality, even though he's quiet and an easygoing guy, but he's a forceful personality. Strong. I think he related to Johnny Ramone. So, but he still wanted another guitar player. That's me. And because we could play off each other, and I get out of the way. I know because he's got this thick sound. It's like a right with a downbeat. But I could do that. Dun, 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 dun. I could do the high stuff. I could play in the high range with him. So I knew where to get out of the way of his thick sound, but do a little high stuff in it. And so we're rehearsing for Picture My Face and the B-sides Tear Me Apart. And we're going to go to, I think, Sounds Interchange. And it's in the punk era, and everybody's rocking. And there's a store called Star Records where we're rehearsing. And Paul Kovac might have been the manager still then. So we're rehearsing, and there's a guy who everybody in 1977 had a name or an attitude. So even the people who came and seen you play. So there was a guy named Mike Mope. Great name, right?
Love it.
Still around.
Okay.
He comes into the rehearsal when we're rehearsing, goes, look who's on effing guitar. It's Dave effing
You can
Ray.
swear, by the way.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
okay. Well, I'll say
punch
it
that up there.
I'll say it anyhow, just for the effing. It sounds more fun. Dave effing Rave. The effing went, and the rave stayed. So I got anointed by the Mope. And the guys laughed their heads off. Yeah, it's Dave Rave. I got chosen to be a rave. And I liked it because Mr. Shit, I like Mr. Shit, but it was sort of limited. It was a name that was rock and roll, like Buddy Holly had Rave On, which people were doing, right?
Right.
The real kids were singing real Rave On. Yeah, so it just stuck with me from then on. And I remember Nazi Dog saying, where's fucking Dave Rave? And we were backing down the horseshoe, and I went, okay, I'm okay now. Nazi Dog, Steve and Lecky gave me a ability. It was cool. There you go. Sounds good.
Still sounds amazing.
That's an amazing record.
So that's 78, right? May 78.
Yeah.
Okay.
78. Well, we recorded it in 77, but it came out in 78.
Right.
I think about May or April of 78. Now, here's a funny little story.
Yeah.
I finally get the single given to me. We're on Epic Records. Wow, IGM. Big time. And I had to go to a wedding. I remember because Frank and Gord dropped by. The singles gave me a couple. And I went to the wedding and left the car. It was hot. Left the records in the car. They melted. So I never even got a chance to stay here. I still got it. I kept one of them. I don't know where it is. Because I said, I got to remember this moment.
Fucking amazing. Now, everywhere when I was growing up, I'd hear about Teenage Head, this iconic punk band. But every time I'd hear Teenage Head, it didn't sound punk to me. Like, I'm just curious, would you consider Teenage Head a punk band?
Well, it would happen. Really simple. The original punk music, and actually, me and Ralph Alfonso were
FOTM Ralph Alfonso.
Yes.
This guy's the real deal.
Yeah, and we were down at the South by Southwest, and Clem Burke was doing a thing on CBGBs. It was all these CBGBs people, which is what we got lent into. Because you got to remember, there's a story how music comes to, right? So punk rock, which we call punk rock, comes from Dolls, Iggy, Dictators, like the stuff that was on that first set, the Teenage Head. Because when 75, there was no punk rock. It was just this outside rock and roll music. Lou Reed was sort of in there. Bowie was an influence, Eno, that stuff, Roxy Music. So this music put into a pot, and out of that pot, including bubblegum, of course,
right.
The Ramones came from it. Blondie came from it. But if you listen to all very diverse bands, and Clem Burke said this when he was talking about the CB's era, he goes, Blondie, when we were playing, we were trying to do 60s girl stuff, mixed in with some Who drumming, like wild shit, right? The Ramones, he said, we're doing this sort of like 1910 Fruit Gum Company with leather jackets and fast rock and roll, like, gimme, like, sort of like, the old records we would get on the 24 power hits, like that kind of music, Jimmy, Indian, give, like, they were doing that. And then, Talking Heads were doing their art school thing. So everybody was doing, television was doing this weird guitar stuff.
Right.
None of them, he goes, now would be considered punk. It was just outside the FM rock world.
It's like an attitude more than anything.
Yes, FM rock world. Freedom. And then he goes, Steve Bader's band comes along. And he goes, that's technically the band that now the image of what we call punk. It was that kind of, the dog collars, that whole thing. Now, I was in a band in Canada, in New York, with Billy Fica, and
Name the band.
Of Television, and Lauren Agnelli from the band, the Washington Squares Nervous Rex, and with Gary Pig and Coyote Chivy. So we had this band, and Billy, we were driving some gig somewhere in the Midwest, and he starts telling me when him and Richard Hell and Tom Verlaine are trying to find the gig because the doll scene had crashed. And Ungano's and those clubs, he said, were all hard rock clubs. You had to have a record deal to get there. So they went around the city and they found CB's, right? So which was at that time a country and western club.
Well, CB is country blues.
Yeah.
And
so
GB
they
is
asked, and Hilly said, yeah, come on in on Sunday afternoon. He said there was always dog poop underneath the thing, terrible vibe, rats. But they gave him the place to play. There was a pool table. The bikers would play. So everybody from downtown all over started coming to the show. That's the real roots of punk that Teenage Head came from.
Right.
Now, that the British thing, which became more political,
like Sex Pistols
and Clash,
right,
and that style, we more lean to. We love the Pistols. I like the Clash. Love Generation X. We loved a lot of it. We also loved Nick Lowe and Dave Edmunds and that stuff too. You put them all together. That to me is the original punk. Graham Parker, Alice.
Right.
Could you say Graham Parker's punk now? Not really. Elvis Costello.
Right.
But as it went along, it mutated into
very educational, man. You explain it really well too. You should be teaching a course at McMaster.
I should.
I'm gonna ask the guys at McMaster.
But it's just what happened, and then it's remembering it, and then that next level of bands after Teenage Head. I remember going over to the old where the City TV used to be, Record Peddler.
Right.
And I remember those guys, Ben and them showing me those bands from the West Coast, like Jello Biafra. They took it even a little more. Henry Rollins, the West Coast punk bands, right?
Yes.
It's funny when we were, I was during Christmas time.
Yeah. We
did this Christmas show, and I was invited to go, and the Cone from Sum 41. He was there, and we talked all about this stuff. He was asking me all the questions. He said, I never go to after parties. And he goes, but we sat and talked for hours about this stuff.
Oh, I'm fascinated by it.
He loved it. And I was really, I was nice that, what a guy who's in a big famous band and they tour and they're on this big tour is just as interested about what our era. Did you really ever see SFNU? I went, yeah, we played with them in Winnipeg. Right. It's just, you went through this in your life, right? So it's cool, man. You got to share it.
Love it, and it does, when I read, for example, on Wikipedia or whatever, and it always says something like Teenage Head or a punk band from Hamilton, Ontario, but then I listen to a song, which I'm going to play later, because I'm going to ask you about this other band you kind of left and started up, and we'll get back to Teenage Head, because I got a million questions about it, but Let's Shake, if I listen to Let's Shake, so it doesn't sound like a punk song. Doesn't sound like a punk song, yeah.
But you see, so because it's a contextual thing, right. Like it's like, people now go, oh, why were the Rolling Stones so hip in 64 or 65? Because listen to Dean Martin. So when you hear that, bam, 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 it was like, whoa, what's that? Right. Dean
Context
Martin, everybody loves somebody, right? So in the middle of, da, 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 and all in all, we're just another brick in the wall. Or when you hear, I'm just around about. You hear all that music. Or Jefferson Starship. We built this city. In the middle of all that, they hear boom, 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 boom. That's like wild shit, man. Like that's crazy. What's going on with those guys? They don't even know how to play. I remember Kim Mitchell going, and who I like, and we hung out with him this year. But him going in '76 because he had to open up for them.
Max Webster.
And I remember in the article in the CPI magazine goes, these Teenage Head guys, they know 3 chords. They make music, and then it's bam, bam, bam on the drums, right? And that's the way it was heard. Now, eventually, I'm sure he changed his mind as he goes along. But in '76, when he's doing, think about Love Hangover and all that stuff, which we liked. We went and saw Max Whips,
Right.
Toronto Tontos, right? But at that point, here, what we did, it sounded like lunatics. Even like something like Blondie, which you think, okay, that's pretty good pop music, right?
Right.
To hear Clem Burke's drumming, it was great. And Nick Lowe doing Cruel to Be Kind. It was wild, like Cruel to Be Kind. Eagles didn't write Cruel to Be Kind. It's all in context.
It's all, you know what? This is really making it clear, and I appreciate this because I'm born in the mid '70s,
Yeah,
so it's
sure,
like trying
yeah.
to,
It's
I'm
hard for
trying
us.
though. I'm talking to cats like you, and I'm trying to like understand the context. But
easy
this makes sense to me.
Yeah, because it was really in a weird way, because the British punk rock was, because Britain was really having a hard time in the 70s, right? The Dole, and so it was more Clash, London's calling. But in our world, we was more like we were rebelling. We wanted our place in the big rock world, which wouldn't allow us, and we had to fight in, right? Because that was it. Let's get on cue. Come on,
Right. Did you play the last Pogo at the Horseshoe? Were you there, Dave?
I was at the show, but I would always come on for a tune. But yeah, it was done so quick that I never got on, and there was a big riot and all that stuff going on. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was pretty brutal night,
Yeah. Well, how about this? Okay, so maybe a little more detail on the last Pogo before I play Let's Shake. But before I even come back to Teenage Head, let me just play another song that's not Teenage Head.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about these guys. Okay.
Oh, the Shakers. Oh yeah.
I'm gonna make a lot of changes. I forget about the dangers. I'm gonna find a little place where I can run. Get away from the hustle of the city scum. Loosen my head on my employer's rope. I wanna be ready so I can cope in time. Well, it's moving on by me. I might just move down to Hawaii. I want a first-class nurse taking good care of me. Gonna check my breathing very carefully. Probe my body with a stethoscope. I wanna be ready so I can cope in time. Sometimes I feel can't turn the wheel when I'm heading into something that's beyond my control.
Oh, hang on, you gotta go. I want you to hear something. Hang on.
I wanna hold the keys.
So listen to this.
Take a ride.
You know who that is? Mr. Lazy Legs Lewis.
So here, fill me in here. Okay, so like you said, this is the Shakers. Who are the Shakers? And how
Okay.
does Shakers? It's
How do they
happening
fit in there?
like with the Teenage Head,
Yes.
but not Teenage Head.
Okay, here's you go.
Yeah.
It's so easy to understand once you know it. What happened is because, and that's Gordy on the guitar. He's on this track too. What happened is that I was playing, and Teenage Head, Steve, Frank, and thing. Because I was more diverse than those guys. Steve and Gord they weren't singers. I was already in 71 playing coffee houses because I was always a singer-songwriter. I could sing, so that was that era. Those guys. So when Teenage Head started, I was already playing. So they would always have me in, and plus we could do harmony. I could do harmonies.
Right.
So we all sang together. So me, Rick, Frank were originally in a band together when we way back in our first band. So I because of the nature of my personality, I kept playing. So I played with Rick, and then the drummer Claude was my cousin. So we're all Westdale boys again, back to Westdale. And then there was a guy named Tim Gibbons, who was from the east part of the mountain. He used to play around a coffee house. So when we got together to write these songs, we never thought I never thought of punk rock with Rick in that gang. I did that with Teenage Head. It was more doing the acoustics, playing the coffee houses, playing the Nervous Breakdown, going down to the OCA, doing that stuff, playing the coffee house scene that was big at the time. Willie P. Bennett, Murray McLaughlin, that era. So that was going at the same time as this. So when we decided to get together and make a record, I got my cousin on drums, and I said, Gordy, do you want to play guitar? Right. And Gordy said, sure. because we heard Nick Lowe and Dave Edmonds and the pub rock thing. And we said, okay, I said, now there's a place to do a shaker thing, because at that point there was no place for this kind of music. We loved the Everly Brothers, we loved all that stuff, but there was no place. So when we heard that music, like Dave Edmonds and Nick Lowe and Elvis and all that stuff, and they were producing the Jam, then we got a place to do this kind of music.
Right.
So, of course, because we're all in the family, we opened up for Teenage Head, which I would play the Teenage Head show. Then Gordy would have me up to play with them. And then Gordy would come and join us at the end of our set. So it's like, it was just natural because we all lived together. And matter of fact, we're getting the Shakers back together now just because there's nothing else to do. And I actually was going to get Steve to come and play a bass on the track, but he's way to hell up in Minden now. So we never got in time to get him to come down. But Steve was going to design the art album for it. So it's just, now the thing about that song In Time, which is it's the bittersweet of that song, it's sad because that great guitar solo, and Gordy would come in, is that was his last solo before he got in the car accident. And it was just before that happened, and we had him down, and we were hanging out. And, I mean, because is this in New York City? This is
no,
this is in
you
Hamilton.
got the showcase gigs in New York City.
Yeah,
right,
he's going to go to shoot horse.
Okay,
they were supposed to go.
Okay, I'm very curious. So I'm very curious about this. I'm also got to talk to you about Heat Wave, and I also got to talk to you just a little more detail on the last Pogo. So here's the deal. Let's talk about the last Pogo.
Yeah.
And then I want to hear a bit, if you don't mind. Maybe I'm going to play a little Let's Shake, and then we're gonna talk about Heat Wave, because that's in June 1980. Yeah. Then we got to talk about the car accident with Gordy and that on the success of Frantic City. Yeah. And the showcase gigs you're doing in New York City and what happens with the car accident in 1980. So, what do you remember about the last Pogo?
I just remember it was. See, when I got there, it was just chaotic, and because of it just seemed like it all.
In the Horseshoe, right?
Yeah.
December 78.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. I watched Ralph. We were doing a thing with the Diodes. We did a little side project called the Gord Lewis Band, because Gordy wanted to do a couple of tunes before I rejoined the band. And Gene, our drummer, Champagne, said, let's do it. So we put together these shows at the Phoenix. And Ralph played some of the stuff, like some of the stuff he had from his club and also like Pogo. And it's actually pretty amazing stuff. I can't believe that it happened, And
the Phoenix was called the Diamond, right?
Yeah, the Diamond. And even before that, it was I even had another name before that. We did it before it was even called the Diamond.
Right.
Yeah. So what ended up happening is that I would do stuff and come down later on, and I remember is sometimes Frank would look at me and go, this is screwed right now, or this is Steve's drunk, can you play bass? I go, what the hell? I'd rather see Steve drunk play bass, but that was just chaos, and that was my main thing. And I remember all of us just because I was like, let's go downstairs, we'll get out of that way, and all that stuff. So a lot of times I wasn't even in the thick of it all, because we'd be jumping in the back room or something like that,
But there was a riot at the last Pogo, right?
Yes.
So, and cops do shut this down. I mean, it's a documentary film.
Yeah.
And this was this a Gary's presentation?
Yes, it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I've talked to the Garys about this.
I think it was. Yeah. I remember it was chaos, and I remember because I remember being always that Horseshoe side stage,
of course,
and all these people just revved up. And it was, but that was, to me at first, that's happened all the time at the Shoe. In the early days, right. Teenage Head, when Teenage Head played, was always chaos. And there was always something going in those really early days. And there was, to me, I remember being at what the hell, the place where the Elvis did the Masonic Temple.
Right.
They would do shows there.
Concert
crazy things would happen there. Like I remember fights break out, and Teenage Head's manager Brower getting punched in the face, and that was just seemed to be the normal thing. I always felt there's going to be something's going to break loose, and that's. But on the other hand, I like that about it. I love that feeling of danger, that something could happen.
Well, this is the punk ethos, right?
Yeah. It was, and and it was loud and nutty and the groove was just crazy, but it was exciting. I remember up to that point, I went, I'd love to be able to go back to, because one of the things I think that we were wishing would happen, the drag of the hippie era, is that we would hear these stories about the Who and the Marquee Club in the 60s and the riots from, the Rumble, the Rumble in Brighton, from the Stray Cats, right? We would hear
a Rumble in Brighton.
Yeah, we would hear about the mods fighting and all that stuff. And it didn't happen at the Jim Croce show, right? It didn't, it was, right. So I was hoping, and you'd hear about these stories when, bands would play and they'd be taking pills all night and go crazy. It wasn't happening. So when the punk thing started happening, I was like, this is like that era, isn't it? Wow, it's like when we used to hear about the 50s and Gene Vincent and in England, and it was really exciting. I just thought that. So that night I thought it was exciting. It was crazy, but I thought it was exciting personally.
Last Pogo.
Yeah, and I didn't mind getting a little bit scared, Okay,
so on that topic here, so we're going to play a little more Teenage Head, and then we're going to talk about this Heat Wave.
Yeah, sure.
I need all the details on the Heat Wave Festival, by the way. So for those keeping track at home, okay, so here's a jam that comes out in 1980, and then later, I guess when you're touring to support Frantic City, the album that this is on, then the Heat Wave Festival, which is in August, and let's get the deets here. That's at Ontario Place Forum, right? Okay, so a little more Teenage Head, and then back with Dave Rave. Maybe we'll hear Dave Rave over this thing. Let's hear. Woo!
Great bass. Punk words.
All right, things are really cooking now. Let's Shake, big hit in this country. Tell me what you can about this time in the history of Teenage Head.
After the background is that the first album, even though it was great, at the time was a disappointment for the guys in terms of sound, not the songs, and everybody was really wanted to get a better sound, and with the Shakers, we went and recorded at Grand Avenue, and I brought Gordy down, and Daniel Lanois, we know the great Daniel, what then was Dan Lanois, and he was engineering. So what had happened, it sounded so good on our record, even though we didn't really have a band yet, the Shakers, it was just a concept. It sounded so good that radio picked it up, NY picked it up, Chum Man, CKOC, and it had that. We wanted to do something like rock pile, Dave Edmunds, like Trouble Boys, right? So Gordy does this ripping solo, and I remember we're in the car, we're going to play going to the Larry's Hideaway, and Teenage Head's manager at the time was Jack Morrill. Frank, me, Gordy in the car, I'm driving, and our song Out the Door comes on the radio, and Chum on one of the stations, and Frank just goes, listen how effing good this song sounds. How come we got our right to Jack? We got to do something. So they send the band. Jack makes a deal with Grand Avenue in Hamilton to recut Top Down, but they don't know who Dan Lanois is in Toronto yet, right? So we got to get Stacey Hayden to produce it, who had just finished working with David Bowie on the Saturday Night Live. So we go there, we cut a new version of Let's Shake, of the Top Down, which is killer, right? It's got rock and roll, and it's, got acoustic guitars. We're putting acoustics on, bongos, and even Lanois then was a good engineer. So it went really well. IGM put it as a single, B-side with kissing the carpet. So when they go in to make the record deal, they got to deal with Attic. And then instead of going back to Grand Avenue, which I thought they maybe should have, but they did almost as good a job. They went to Kensington Sound here in the Kensington Market. And a good bunch of guys, though. And Stacy produced it. He passed the audition from top down. And we started cutting at Frantic City. But everybody was really prepared. That song was just called Shake at the time, not Let Shake. We tried different. It was a keyboard, there was a harmonica, stuff like that going on it. And we added some acoustics. And so when it's time to come to do vocals, I'm with Frank. We're right beside each other. And all of a sudden, in the blue of the middle of the cake, he pulls his pants down. And just his underwear, smiling away. And he's singing it and dancing it. I don't want to break the take, because I used to shadow him vocally. Me and him could do double. I would shadow him, but I didn't want to laugh my head off because that's just the way he was. He was so funny and so much energy that he was infectious, and anyhow, that whole album at Kensington was really, took time, not going to fall from the same thing happened on the first record, going to get a good sound this time. And Stacy did a good job. And Greg Roberts was the engineer who eventually, from that record, got a job at Grand Avenue and became one of the main engineers and a great guy, and eventually went back to Change Heather to do a live record. So it was pretty cool, like it was done over, which this song here now, this was the A-side. Now the sax comes from, and you'll know this, the way pop world works. So they have there's a cool tune called Just Friends, acoustic guitars, right? And all of a sudden, Stacy, to make the song pop, really pop of the era, gets Rick Morrison, great Toronto sax player. There he is, right? Because at that point we had
yeah, right. Of course,
every song had to have that sax to get onto the radio because this is going to be the AMs. They figured this is. Attic Records signs the band. This is the song that's going to be the break them over from punk to Q107
mainstream,
world
sure.
and Chum AM and CKOC, all those stations, right? So this is it.
Okay, let's hear a bit more here.
Yeah.
Come back to it.
Now I see all the things that went behind. But if you decide to go, that's okay.
And that's a 12-string Yamaha on that. Here we go. Take that sax sound. See, it's even got that, and which would probably come off the Saturday Night Live Randy Brecker thing,
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
So is that coming from the Attic? Like, I was hoping you'd spend a moment because
Attic Records, yeah.
Because we lost both founders, right?
Yeah.
FOTM, Alex Mayer, and Tom Williams both passed away in the last
good guys.
2 years. Yeah, interesting. I was just writing a piece on my blog about walking on sunshine, critiquing the waves, because Attic guys kind of basically make that a hit in Canada, and then they get
through
the
Ralph
big deal.
Alfonso.
Yeah. Look at this world, man. Everything's connected here. Okay, so
disconnected and connected.
They were good guys, right? Al Mayer and
Love them.
Tom.
Yeah, I knew. I remember meeting Tom. I thought Al was the business guy, and he was quiet and reserved and very busy. But once he left the business and became on Facebook, then he became friends with everybody, and he would be talking to me. I go, Al Mayer, talking to me? No,
Right.
What the hell? I felt honored. Like he's like the king of Canadian music, right?
God, man, a lot of great. There is just let listeners know that there's a really cool episode of Toronto Mic'd with Al Mayer. And
Wow.
we get all these stories. And
Yeah,
stuff. And,
Al's amazing.
from Killer Dwarves to
You name
Maestro Fresh West. It's all.
Sharp guy.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, and now I'm ready for the Heatwave Festival. Like, what? Tell us.
But before that happens,
set it up.
just want to tell you something. And Heatwave alluded to Heatwave.
Sure, take your time.
When Attic listened to the record and signed the band, there's two songs that they thought out of the record, how the record should be on the radio, were Something of Mine, A-side, and Let Shake was put on the B-side. In retrospect, what happens is they put it out, and it becomes a double hit.
Right.
So Attic go, okay, how can it even be bigger? So they go to this place that does, because now with Added to Heatwave, the band's now smoking, right? They got added to Heatwave. It's the punk rock Woodstock, right? The punk rock Woodstock. Elvis Costello, Talking Heads, and even Canadian band The Kings got on it.
Shout out to Mr. Zero.
A late edition, and all the different.
The Pretenders are on that.
Yeah, so it's an amazing
B-52s.
event. Teenage Head get added onto the bill, flown to the show, and but Let's Shake becomes like played actually probably even more than some of mine at certain stations. So Al and Attic guys go, okay, what can we do? So they do a cleaned up version of the song. They go to a company that does that kind of research, market research, and what don't they like about the song? What they like about the song. So you're, instead of real ugly, it's real nice and lovely, all that stuff. And they put a new version out with the B-side of I Want to Love You. But the song, the radio programmers go, you're not fooling us. Nevin over at CKOC goes, that's not Teenage Head. So they in reality, they shouldn't have put Let's Shake on the B-side. They should have put another song on the B-side. But they didn't, and maybe put that as a second follow-up single, Let's Shake. But these things happen, right? Nobody's perfect.
Right, it's all part of your story now, man.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Like for the youngsters out there wondering about this Heatwave Festival, let's tell them like 85,000 plus at most.
Yeah,
right?
and I don't. I think it looked like even more.
Right.
Because it's a big racetrack. If you look at the pictures,
like north of Bowmanville. Yeah,
it's these racetrack, and it looked as far as you can see. There's people, and it was a big racetrack, and it was amazing. And what a moment! Like it's funny because I don't know why it doesn't get celebrated more by the rock press, like even English or American, because
a lineup.
It was an amazing lineup, and it was the first time when the Talking Heads brought their horns. Elvis was at his peak, and so was Dave Edmunds and Nick Lowe, the Carlene Carter was there, and it was pretty heavy show, of rock and roll music. The Pretenders were big.
Yeah,
it blows me away that sometimes punk rock gets put down because of or in terms of its merit, musical merit, but all those bands were influential and amazing bands, and an incredible moment. And Teenage Head, there's an album now finally out. If you want to get it, you can go to this. I think it's SING. It's a marketing company, and they're putting out. You can get the video, you can get the album, you can get the CD. It's well worth it. There's a whole bundles, yeah. So that's the
Heatwave,
yeah.
That's you guys opening Heatwave, okay?
Yeah.
Then there's the infamous Ontario Place Forum show,
yes.
Which comes up often on this program. I'll just warn you here,
yeah,
Dave. But you were there. Were you there for that one?
It was there at the what do you call it? Where we because we were doing a birthday and we were there at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were you there? Like, the way I hear about it is this.
It was chaotic.
Yeah, riot. But I always need to talk to someone who was there, and they were like, "I need the truth." What
would basically happen is they oversold it. People in the inside didn't know it was going on, what was going on outside, but because they stopped people coming in.
But you even correct me if I'm wrong. I don't start going to the forum till like the mid '80s, but like you don't sell it, right? Like you don't sell tickets to the forum, like don't you just get into Ontario Place and then?
I think that's how it works.
Yeah.
But I think too many people came,
right.
And when people couldn't get in, they started swimming. They started doing anything they could to get in, and that's when the police got involved.
Wild.
And so Gord, when the cops, when Globe and Mail asked him, "What do you think about that?" He said something like, the cops, overreacted or something like that, and which created a bit of trouble because the police didn't like that.
Well, the Toronto police, and they've got a long way to go still, mark my words. But back then, particularly, completely lacked chill. Like, go listen to Pucka Orchestras, Cherry Beach Express or whatever, right? So,
and the thing is, too, also Toronto, like, after that day, I think they stopped bringing Ontario Place.
this apparently you guys killed rock and roll concerts at Ontario Place.
Yes, that's true.
For like several years.
Teenage had stopped the like they didn't do it. They were doing other shows, but not
Burning Cummings only, right?
Yeah, I guess even though like he's got his own way to rock.
Right? Yeah, no, not just.
But and also CNE. I think they stopped a couple of shows there, but then eventually, Alice came and it got shut down too, and it just caused a little reaction. They even made the Rolling Stone magazine, rock show and
headlines, man.
Yeah, it was. I think that point was in Teenage Heads. If you look at a trajectory of a band, that was at the peak, right? And around that period of time, it was because it's like. All bands have a trajectory, and like Elvis when he was on Ed Sullivan or something like that,
right.
and then but that was like the Ed Sullivan show for Teenage Head. It was
mass
like
hysteria.
Yeah, everybody, and that's when I think because I quote when you like the example now. That Taylor Swift, she sure can run, can't she? I mean, you see that ad, that joke kind of thing, I don't know much about football, but that Taylor Swift's got to be a fast runner, But I mean, like like little moments where like where the world gets reminded of what's going on, and I think at that point it showed all of Canada, it wasn't just a punk rock thing no more. It was a Q107. It really transformed from the Vile Tone era into the Q107 era, and I'll be honest here about Canada. Like as a fellow musicians, we really wanted to do. I know Gordy and what do we always talk about? We want to be like what was happening in New York. We were wanting what was going to Detroit and England, of course, and that wasn't happening here. At that point, it wasn't happening here, and that's why it was so important to get to New York. And
good segue here because you're just talking about riding the high here, right?
Yeah.
With Frantic City, and then of course Heat Wave, and then the riots at Ontario Place. I think that's good fucking press for a punk band. Okay, I think that's cool. But here we are now. Attic Records starts setting up these showcase gigs in New York City, right? Because you got to get a big U.S. record deal. Teenage Head needs a big U.S. record deal.
Yeah,
and this is
RCA, a few people are going to come out. Yeah.
And what happens with your dear friend Gord Lewis?
With the accident.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a tragedy because anytime something happens that you go, what if? It's like watching a replay. If the quarterback only threw the ball to that guy, not to that guy.
Well, if San Francisco hits that extra point after the touchdown.
Yeah, that little stuff that happens, it causes so much debate. And I'm sure, in Gord's mind, he replayed that for the rest of his life. It's a bit of a tragedy in a way, because it's. I'm sure he goes, if only that didn't happen. And
shit luck, man.
Yeah, so you were in Palmerston in a arena show, and supposed to go home, and a guy who was driving the van, I think, might have had one or two in him, a little extra that he shouldn't have had. It was not before our new awareness of alcohol, which we didn't have then. And missed a turn, like in those country roads. It's like that guy, that hockey team,
Humboldt.
In Humboldt, it was that, and I think the mistake that happened was that he moved, because everybody else got hurt, but he moved, and you're not supposed to move when you get when you get in an accident like that, right? So he was in the hospital for a pretty heavy time. He went to Kitchener. And it was a lot of pain, and I think that pain continued through his life. Obviously, medication and all that, and it took a while. And everybody was still fans of the band, but the band got David Bendeth to play guitar, like Jack, the manager, and it might have been the wrong guy because then David was a jazz guitar player, but the Teenage Head's manager picked him because of, I guess, association. So instead of going da 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 da, he went da 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 da, like he played a little of these jazzy notes. There was no Iggy in it, right? And that you need that Iggy rawness to make that happen. So the shows went on. David played. But and then eventually he left, and another guy came in for a while, played. But by the time Gordy got back, the momentum. The fans were
That
there.
window closed.
But the momentum was there. The fans didn't leave. Fans didn't go, wow, we don't like you anymore. You just that momentum, which is hard. And it took a bit of the spirit of the band, you know. And then when we got to Tornado, though I didn't think it's a bad album, but the spirit was gone. And I remember being in those sessions, and David Benders produced it, and you know, it wasn't as exciting as it should have been. So I liked the songs, and now then when they reissued the record, and the record's a good album. It is a good album. It's just not as good as it could have been. That's all, you know.
Yep. In this era here, now that we're in the Tornado
spirit.
era. Now, okay, so that's sort of a tragic tale. It sounds like there was an opportunity there, the car crash, everything, and it doesn't come together for Teenage Head. But Elephants and Stars says one thing they didn't touch on in the documentary was their brief turn as Teenage Heads.
Yes.
So this is tied to that kind of, right?
Well, when Al Attic Records didn't get an American deal for the band, Jack, the manager, said, we got to get an American deal. So he started looking around, even though the band was heavily contracted with Attic. So he finds that MCA is interested. And I think his name was Leslie Anderson. Lovely lady. I remember her well. And she came into the sessions and she liked it. So all that hard work of getting off of Attic and a lot of bad spirits there were there. She brings the record to L.A. And the guy in L.A., they like it. They like the record. It's good. But, you know, it's not going to float in the Midwest America. Right? Not going to float.
Right, because now Head means something completely different.
Yes. And also, so add the Heads, and now it's a little more...
Right.
Little light, little easier to take, like Talking Heads or something like that, you know? So the record gets put out. But unfortunately, it happens with record deals, Irving Azoff took over the label, and everybody who signed the band got fired. So all that work,
shitlock. Teenage Heads got shitlock.
Yeah, and all that work that was there, it didn't matter anyhow, right? So when we did the reissue, we brought it back to Head, you know, like the way it should have been.
Well,
you know?
yeah, I'm looking at your shirt right now.
Yeah.
I got to shout out an FOTM real quick, who he's actually just retired from the business, the record label side, and he's vacationing now, and I've been following his adventures on Facebook. But shout out to Ivor Hamilton. Ivor might be the biggest Teenage Head fan I know.
Oh, loved Ivor. And the Shakers too. When I remember when we brought the single in, he played it. I remember it was the old days of CFNY. Right. You could see the DJ. He just come in. I went around 5. He opened the door. There was no secretary. Brampton, right by Stars. And I gave him the single. He goes, thanks, man. And then I remember getting in the car, and there he played it within about 5 minutes. It was a fantastic. I mean, they continued to make great. It was a great station. Let's face it. Let
me promote then for his birthday So Ivor was here when he retired, and we covered a lot of ground. We always talk about Teenage Head when Ivor's on. But in early March, coming up in about less than a month, I have David Marsden returning to the basement.
You're gonna have David here?
Mars Bar is gonna be here. Yeah, he's been here before, but it's been a few years, so we're gonna do it again.
Man, the king. I'm in my little life, my sister was 4.5 years older than me. So as a result, at the 60s, I went through her eyes. So when I was 6 years old, we listened to Dave Mickey.
590.
And she had the single. So we even had the single of it. Okay. We listened to him all the time, CHIQ. And we loved him, and then he went from there and suddenly...
Went to Chum.
Yeah, he went to Chum, which...
I think he went away to Montreal or something
I think when you were a kid, also don't forget, I was just interested what the hockey games is, what there was music when you're like 7 and 8.
Yeah.
And what's going on with the Leafs and the Habs? So I wouldn't follow everything, but I was listening to music to my sister, and he was the man. And then as time went along, I remember we played Teenage Head, just to fast forward the tape.
Yeah.
Great line by Dave Marsden. He liked our electric guitar album, the one I'm singing on. And they played it. They started playing us again because they'd stopped playing Teenage Head. It was no longer, it was Q107 area. It was other music they were playing. So we got back on. And I remember we got to play with Don Burns, who ran it. Remember? He had us play a private party, and they were all there. And Dave was there. And Gordy goes, Dave, why now? And he goes, you know what it's like, Gordy. In the music industry, sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. You're back up, you know. And I remember what a great little, you know, that's Dave Marsden, that sense of humor that he had. What a brilliant guy.
So early March, it's less than a month. He'll be back here. And, I'll send you regards there. But you mentioned electric guitar. Okay, so Basement Dweller. Shout out to Basement Dweller. He's actually on the live stream.
Hello.
Listener. He says, what was it like working with Daniel Lanois and Malcolm Byrne on 1988's electric guitar album? Okay. Plus, he just wants you to know Everybody Needs Somebody is still a kick-ass beauty of a tune.
Oh, that's sweet, man. Fantastic. Well, just simple, very simple, is that Danny was a Hamilton guy. And I learned singing with Dan because I'm good with tunes, and I learn quick. And in the 70s, performers, the acoustic scene didn't want what they call leakage, meaning that they didn't want cymbals and everything. They wanted it was like through the Pink Floyd era, right? Every instrument, there couldn't be a sound that leaked. So I would do, for singer-songwriters, I would be the guy they called the guide vocal. I would quietly guide the band. It wasn't I'd learn their songs, do it, and Danny was the engineer.
Right.
You know, it was great because Bruce Coburn's bass player would be there, Gordon Lightfoot's drummer. They were these guys who were Don Potter, who Ed Roth, who we used to work at Rick James. These heavy technical guys, and I would have to guide them and not screw up. So I did it. And, you know, I remember Dennis Pendrith, Murray McLaughlin, and these were the guys we looked up to, you know, the heavy tech. And so that's how I could know Dan. So basically, when I brought Gord in to meet Dan, I said, Gord, meet Dan. Maybe next album we can do it with him because he's good. He's good. And he did our Out the Door single, the Shaker single. And Gordy plays great guitar. And anyhow, so... as time went along, we stayed in touch, and eventually, you knew what a guy like Lan was. Something was going to happen. Even though at the time, and I remember I had a few rock and roll lawyers in Toronto who I won't mention their names now because they're gone. But I remember them telling me, this is the foresight of the industry. That Lanois kid, he's good, but he's never going to make it.
That's funny.
You know?
That's funny.
But anyhow, guess what? 2 years later, I'm at this music conference. Same guy goes, you got to get this Lanois guy. He's the guy. Same guy went, wait a second. Come on. That's what my little lesson in the music industry. They don't know. They have no idea. Nobody knows. But anyhow, so Danny we stayed friends all those years. Danny had just come back from doing some U2 stuff. We were recording that electric guitar.
Yeah, so U2's probably the Joshua Tree or something.
Yeah. And I said, what are you doing? You know, come on over. You know, we're recording. Do you want to bring your guitar over? Danny's always good for a go. He liked Gordy's guitar playing. Slipped in the car. Well, we didn't tell our engineer, Mark Lopano, that was Dan, because we figured it would have prejudiced him.
Right.
So he just comes in, and Dan's going, well, put your 2 amps, like he's giving them the Lanois directions. Hey, put your 2 amps there, do this here, do that there, you know. And Mark's like, okay. And then I remember after he leans at me as Dan's playing, he goes, is that? I go, we did it on purpose. We're all laughing, going, yes. And he went, because at that time, So was huge, and Joshua Tree was big.
Massive.
Yeah,
well, as big as it gets, right?
Yeah, so,
listen,
you know.
So for Basement Dweller, we're going to finish up this song so I can enjoy some Great Lakes.
And that's Gordy and Danny playing guitar, duet live in the studio together. If you listen to the guitar, and you never think, so Gord's doing he's doing the lows up. Danny's doing the high part. Now here they are. George, that's Dan. There's Gordy. That's Gordy. And then Dan is doing that. Gordy was a great guitar player, man. And then you can hear that. That's Danny.
Dude, I'm loving this, man.
Yeah.
What took you so long? I'm telling you.
You know what it's like?
Nancy?
That Nance. She's such a good person.
Fucking love this.
Yeah, so it was fun to do that. And then he did another track called The Girl That Radiates That Charm. And it's Danny on that. Here's a crazy little story about that record. Yeah. Danny does this great rough mix of this song. And we're all like, oh, it's so great, you know. And the guy who helps the engineer, who's supposed to put it on the real tape, doesn't. Puts it on a cassette. And we're like, Are you numb? That's Lanois there. You put it on. He goes, I didn't know you wanted me to put it on a real tape. You numb.
Numbskull.
Yeah, we laughed, Dave.
Love these stories. Okay, so I'm going to give you, you've earned this. You've more than earned
Sure.
it. But you're enjoying your Great Lakes? Is it good?
It's great, man.
Yeah.
Tasty.
Me too, buddy. Nothing's better, man. Playing some Teenage Head, talking to Dave Rave, getting the full story, enjoying my Great Lakes. I'm sending you home with back to the Hamilton with some Great Lakes beer.
Oh, that's so
Take that home
sweet.
with you.
Thank you. What
And
lovely pint.
do you like Italian food?
Love it.
In my freezer upstairs, don't leave here without your Palma Pasta lasagna.
I
Man,
know.
you're going to love it.
I have nothing. I haven't got to this. I'm going to eat this tonight. I'm going to get to this. Go to the store after this.
You're going to eat that tonight and tomorrow night and maybe the day after. It's
Whoa.
just delicious. There's lots of it.
Thank you,
it's in
brother.
my freezer.
Palma-
Thank you, Palma Pasta.
Where's Palma Pasta? So I want to go there.
Mississauga and Oakville, so kind of
Beautiful.
between where you live and I live.
Okay,
there's 4
we'll have to go
locations.
there for regular dinner.
PalmaPasta.com. You won't regret it. Every time I got a note from Peter Myers, who's Mike Myers' brother and Paul Myers' brother.
Yeah.
And that's basically that's where they get all of their delicious Italian
Go
food.
on.
It's Palma Pasta. So when people
Beautiful.
check it out, they become regular customers. So thank you, Palma Pasta. We shout out Great Lakes. We shout out Great Lakes Brewery, but we shout out Ridley Funeral Home. And here is a measuring tape for you, Dave Rave. You never know if you got to measure
You
something.
never know when you're going to need it.
So thank you to the good people at Ridley Funeral Home. In fact, soon we'll be talking about death, sadly, but pillars of our community since 1921. Also, there's a great podcast from Raymond James Canada. It's called The Advantaged Investor Podcast. It's hosted by FOTM Chris Cooksey. Whether you have somebody looking after your financial investments or you currently manage your own investment plans, The Advantaged Investor provides the engaging wealth management information that you, Dave the Rave, value. Dave the Rave is Ogilvy. You're just Dave Rave.
Yeah.
You value as you pursue your most important goals. And last but not least, I'm sure, Dave, you've got like a drawer full of old devices and cables and old electronics.
Yeah.
Don't throw that in the garbage because the chemicals end up in our landfill. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca.
Nice.
And you'll find out a place near you. You can drop that off. It gets properly recycled.
Beautiful.
Okay, we're going to do some housekeeping here.
Okay.
Notes came in. Dave Rave is coming on. We're going to talk Teenage Head. I got so many notes. So Mike Hannafin, he's an FOTM himself. He was actually on CFNY as a sports guy working with Fred Patterson
Right.
on the Pete and Geet show.
Yep.
Shout out to Mike Hannafin. He says,
Hi, Mike.
he's in BC now. So many memories. Saw the Head so many times in college pubs in the early 80s. The Blind Duck at Erindale College, then
my
at Humber
God.
College pub as
Whoa.
well. Then later saw them a lot while working for CFNY. I still have a cassette tape of their awesome live show on
Wow.
CFNY from Spats nightclub in Etobicoke.
Spats.
Where was Spats?
It was right up by the airport.
Okay, right.
We played the very closing night. Yeah.
Okay.
And the place
where
went
was Spats?
nuts. And I talk about now back to the Horseshoe. The
Yeah.
whole place got destroyed. Everybody went crazy.
Missed all the good stuff. Okay, as part of their Frantic City release promotion, as far as I know, it only still exists on a reel-to-reel tape. Phil Evans, Captain Phil, he did promotions at CFY back then, or Earl Veal might know more, so I'll follow up and find out if they have it. I discussed my final Teenage Head concert on a Toronto Mic'd episode 1056. So people can go back and hear Hannafin talking about you guys. Seeing them in Vancouver in May 2008 at the Venue Club. The same night, Rush played at the Arena.
Wow.
What a fluke double bill, he says. Frankie was only singing about half the lyrics of any song.
Makes sense.
He had cans of Budweiser at various spots on the stage and just moved between the beer cans for a swig. A few months later, he was gone. We're going to talk about that in a moment.
Yeah.
I have plenty more memories, but maybe save them for the Mike-umentary. That's something I do when I dive deep.
Okay.
This is a big Teenage Head doc right here. For Dave Rave, how challenging was it to take Frankie's spot in 85? The band obviously accepted him, and he had a history with all of them. But what about with the fans? Did he always figure it was going to be a temporary thing until Frankie came back?
Well, at the time, Gord was dead set. Like when Frank left the band. Now, here's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
After Teenage Head, after Jack Morrow, and it's unfortunate this is not in the doc because you can only have so much time on a doc. And they had there was a point of view they were trying to put across, which is more Gord's illness at the end. And I understand that, but there's another doc. If another doc was done, we could even go into what happened in the 80s.
Frankie's illness, right?
Yeah, and I just think when the band let go of manager Jack Morrow, we lost our like there was always like a point of anger, and it was the manager. Now the anger had gone, and we all we started fighting each other, which was a bit sad, And a lot of people who maybe would have that Jack would have done, he could have. We had to now talk to these people, and we became the managers, and it was a lot of work between me and Gord. It was really tough, and Frank and Nick, there was just all this weird stuff that started happening, and so when Frank and Nick left the band, Gord was resolute. No, not going to be back in the band again. This is going to be the new band, and we were going to start from square one. And when we found Jack Pedler as drummer, we went from Blair Mojo Martin, who was a cool frontman in the 80s, and we liked him a lot. He had a real Iggy thing, and he really helped us in the beginning when the fans were wondering what the hell's going on. We don't have social media then, so a lot of people didn't know, and it was on the radio, but a lot of people didn't know. So we'd be in the outskirts, and they'd be like, "Where's Frank? Where's this?" So it was a bit scary at first for me, but because I'm like Dave Gilmour, right? I just get on the ice and I play.
Well, Doug.
I'm Dave. Well, I call myself Dave Gilmour. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I hear you.
I'm the hockey guy. Like the
I was
hockey.
thinking Pink Floyd or whatever.
Yeah, I know, not that Gilmour. I'm the Doug Gilmour. But then Dave Gilmour went through the same thing with Roger Waters. So
right.
Yeah, but yeah. So I became I got on the ice and said, "I'll be the captain. Don't worry." And if you guys believe in me, and Gord did, and so did Steve, I put my rhythm guitar down and started playing. I didn't want Frank to leave. I had so much fun playing with him, and it was really good,
Tell me about, so I talked to lots of people who knew Frank Venom, and I don't want to make a practice of speaking ill of the dead.
No.
I never met Frank, and I don't know Frank,
no.
but I'm not certain he's a sweetheart. You know what I mean? Like what kind of a guy was Frank Venom? I'll just give it a little context for those who are learning about Teenage Head for the first time. In October,
what kind of guy was he really? Okay.
Well, because in October 2000, so October 15th, 2008, Gord Lewis announces that Frankie Venom had died following a battle with throat cancer.
Yes.
Now Hamilton was gonna erect a statue for Frankie Venom, and then it got canceled because people were criticizing, like, you're spending public tax dollars, you're spending public funds to commemorate a man who used illegal drugs. I forgive him for that, but then was convicted of domestic assault. And a lot of people have less than kind words to say about, some people have less than kind words to say about Frankie. He wasn't universally beloved. So what's the real talk on Frankie Venom as a human being?
Well, the guy that I knew wasn't perfect. But on the other hand, I always thought he had a great sense of humor. I always thought that he was always good to me. I only know my relationship with him. It was another era, and it's implying now we can't, I think when that happened with the statue, it was a different era. And I think that there was a certain group of people didn't want that kind of statue in town. And it's too bad, because I honestly thought, I've known, maybe I have an idealized version with him, but I just know, for me and him, I always got along with him. I thought he was funny as hell. I just thought that he was brilliantly talented. I thought that nobody could go. He went from drums to guitar to singing, very hard to do. And he was I thought, to me, he was the original amazing frontman that came from Canada, like a unique. He set a new style, right? That without him, you don't got Gord Downey. He gave permission to all these people to be rude, but rude in a fun way.
You don't hear stories of Gord Downey being rude, right?
No, because he comes from another era. Right. Frank was more just, he had that rock and roll. It's that, gritty. But he was rude to me in a way that was not personal rude. Like, I don't think Frank would make fun of somebody if he didn't know them. Like it was more just that cheeky rude. Like, you know, like.
So like no, what is that? Hardcore logo, right?
Yeah.
Like that, like which is probably modeled a little bit after.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
modeled a lot.
Yeah, I can't know. It's probably
Hugh, I'm definitely Hugh.
Hugh
you
Dillon's
know.
doing
Hugh
a Frankie
wanted to-
Venom, I think. You spit in your face and that punk.
It was all in context of the time, you know, and you know, I just knew him as a great singer and a great songwriter, and you know, I mean, obviously, when you know somebody, that changes everything. Maybe if you didn't know him, if you were just in the room and you go, "Wow, that guy's rude," but we were too busy laughing. You know, I have so many great memories with him.
Right. Well, I'm sorry for your loss again.
But, yeah, you know,
I never met the man, so I.
But I know what you're saying. I know what you're
it's just
saying.
I do talk to lots of people who knew Frankie Venom, and there's
he could be honest beyond he needed to be. Like I remember, I'll give you an example. Like we were in a bar one time, and this guy comes up to him and he goes, "Frankie, you're my favorite singer." Now I would go, "Oh, thanks." Frank goes, "As if you know," which is funny. As if you would know. And then the guy buys them beers all night and they're hugging each other by the end of the night. How do you do that?
Like it's a persona, right?
Yeah, it's a persona.
What's the name in the hardcore logo? What's the name of that character? Something Dick, right?
Yeah.
It'll come to me in a minute.
Yeah.
But that, like, yeah, there's
you
a bit of a...
You gotta live that. And he lived it. Like it's not, you can't imitate. But I mean, a lot of guys want to be that. But yeah, you know, I got a kick out. I was laughing my head off. I'm going, I couldn't do that. But he could. And he did it in a way that was charming and funny, and next thing you know, that guy's buying him beers all night, and you know they're walking out hand in hand, right? You know, like Frankie. You know.
Here's a question that ties in nicely to this conversation. It's Hamilton Mike. So hello to Hamilton Mike,
yes.
Listening in Hamilton. My son and I will be at the 50th anniversary show in April. So tell us about this 50th anniversary show before I read the rest of Hamilton Mike's note here.
Sure. Well, Steve figured out that the band actually started in '74. And that's when
I started in '74, by the way.
Oh, really?
So
there you go. Yeah, exactly. So he, you know, realized it's time to, you know, to celebrate it, and he went out. Steve found a cool place. They made an offer at this place called Carmen's Banquet Center, and we thought it'd be a really cool place to put together a celebration. Yeah. And I don't know exactly what Steve's got planned, but he's going to have pictures and stuff like that I think he's going to show, and he's going to have Gord Lewis's nephew play before us because he wants to keep the Gord tradition going, you know.
Yeah, it's like when the big man's nephew fills in now.
Yeah,
when
Jake.
You go see, Jake Clemens, FOTM Jake Clemens at E Street Band. I'm supposed to see Bruce in
because he got hurt, didn't he?
Yeah,
you
know he had
stomach
thing. Yeah, hernia.
Yeah.
So I'm supposed to see him in November. I hope he's good. And I always, whenever I think of Bruce Springsteen now, there's a great story told many times, but you told it on Toronto Mike by the aforementioned mayor of Hamilton, Tom Wilson. Yeah. And Tom Wilson talks about, you know, meeting Bruce, who liked one of his songs, Jesus Sings the Blues. And then he was staring at Bruce's tits. Like, so Tom Wilson got caught staring at Bruce Springsteen's tits. It's a great fucking story. Okay, so let me get to these notes here because I miss them. You've been amazing. I don't know how much time I said I'd take, but I'm gonna
go as long as you want, man. I'm chilled. As long as you.
Okay, we're gonna go till I have to pick up the kids.
I'm just gonna be in traffic anyhow. So
romantic traffic, which ties in with Mike from K-Dub.
Yes.
I'm in the middle of the Hamilton Mike. I'll get back to Mike from K-Dub.
Yeah. So Mike,
romantic traffic will make more sense. But Hamilton Mike says, I know Dave took over for Frankie back in the 80s, but how did it feel then and versus how it felt after Frankie died to take over such a pivotal role? How about for Trent for Gordy? How about Trent for Gordy?
Yes.
And then he says, I have huge respect and love for Dave Rave, and he's a massive Trent fan because Hamilton Mike is such a big Headstones fan. Mm-hmm. He named his kid after Hugh Dillon.
There you go. Well, it was, first of all, number one, you don't replace Frank. So the first few months was tough because, you know, I understood the fans because I like them. So I was a fan too. So as a friend, as well as a friend. So, I mean, he's one of the most charismatic guys I ever met and one of the funniest guys. So I loved him. And so when Gordy said to do it, I went, "Are you sure?" And he goes, "No, do it." So I did it. I just said, I'll be me. I'm not going to imitate him. I even purposely let my hair grow long just so I wouldn't have that short look that he had. for the first year or two. But it was tough at first, and then after we kept playing, the audience started realizing it's not a gimmick. We're doing the best we can. The songs are important. Then we added the new songs. So the first time it was good, and it started rough and it got good. And I was ready for anything. I was ready for booing. I was ready for anything they want, and I wouldn't have blamed them. So I never took. I was on the audience's side. Nice. But then when I left the band and went to New York, and Frankie came back, which wasn't planned, because we did 3 years or 4 years doing that without him. Then I left, and Frank came back, and I thought he did a great job coming back. But then when we lost him, I was in Paris when it happened, Paris, France, and it cost me $1,000 his death, because it was a days before you can get plans in Canada, and everybody called me. And everybody did interviews.
Telephone calls.
Yeah, so the calls to you you would get charged both ways,
right?
And you could not do it. You had to take the call. So it was really sad. And then when I had no plans to redo the band. I thought the band was going to break up, but then they got another guy in for a little while to sing. I know that. And then what happened was me and Gordon, Steve, Jack Pedler, the drummer at the time, got diverticulitis. Diverticulitis is called.
Yeah, I've heard this. Sure.
Yeah, so he couldn't play no more, and they had to do a fundraiser. I happened to be back in town, and I was at the show, and the singer who was supposed to be, I think his name was Pete
McCauley,
didn't make it, and so they said, "Would you do it?" I went, "Okay, I'll go. Why not?" So I came up and started doing it, and it was like an Elvis movie. Seriously, like, in Elvis movies where he gets up and sings and the whole planet starts slapping. Everybody started they were so happy.
Wow.
And I
you were
looked
back.
And I looked at Gordon and Steve, and they were happy. And about a week later, Steve called me up and said, "Hey, I think what happened is that Deb realized when she saw the band that Steve was happy and felt like we're home again." And she said to Steve, "Maybe, I'm sure if he was thinking about it, his wife sort of said, why don't you call him then?" I think there was sort of a combination of the two, that they probably talked about it. And then Steve called. And then since then, of course, without Frank, it's a different world, right? And it was nice to be with Gord again and play with him. And
you were there at the beginning, right? So
yeah, so I was back home.
It's like going home again, like beautiful.
Family. I talked to Steve today, and he said to say hello. And, the birthday boy, and he wants to keep the band going. And I said, whatever you're doing, because Steve's been there from the beginning, I'll back you. Because Steve is one of the greatest guys in the world, and one of the great bass players. And he stood behind all of it. Like, he saw crazy things happen with Frank. He saw, crazy things happen with Gord. He was there, and he was steady the whole time, and he still is. He's one of the most amazing guys I know, and I've known him since when he was a baseball pitcher in Wild and Fast. When he beamed me, but he's always been an amazing guy.
Right.
Solid, honest, and straightforward.
Amazing. Okay,
yeah.
So I was teasing Romantic Traffic.
Yes.
Co-write, by the way. I'll read the question first here before I tell you the co-write. The co-write is Gord Depp, of course, but Rob Pruce has a co-writing credit. Right. Rob Pruce, everybody, will be here twice next week because we're going to do a toast episode of Bob Willett, but he's going to come back to kick out jams with Liza Fromer because Liza revealed her first ever crush was the keyboardist for the Spoons, Mr. Rob Pruce. So we're going to do this nice little thing for Liza. Okay, so Mike from K-Dub writes in and says, Teenage Head played our Catholic high school in grade 9.
Yes.
Without going into too much detail, live bands were banned for 4 years after that until the Spoons with Rob Pruce played in grade 12. So he's not going into detail. Whatever went down with Teenage Head playing at this high school, they had to ban rock and roll concerts for 4 years.
Yes. Well, this is where Frank's words are a little... Maybe, I'm used to him, but maybe he shouldn't have
the
said.
Catholic school.
Maybe he shouldn't have said what he said. And
hey, Mike from K-Dub, write me and give me the scoop here. I'll share it with Rob Pruce next week. James Edgar, great friend of the show. James comes out to many a Toronto Mike listener experience. So I'm just going to let everybody know TMLX 15, that's the 15th Toronto Mike listener experience, is taking place June 27 from 6 to 9 p.m. at Great Lakes Brewery in Southern Etobicoke, and we're going to all be fed by Palma Pasta. And you, Dave Rave, you're invited, buddy.
Oh, thank you.
June 27, 6 to 9 p.m. That would be amazing. Dave Rave fucking shows up. James Edgar says, fun fact, they played my friend's wedding at This Ain't Hollywood in Hamilton.
Whoa.
So maybe 2009 or 2010.
Okay.
Around then. Okay. So, and Connie wrote in to say, there's a Teenage Head cover band called Disgusting.
Oh, really?
And Connie's still trying to process this. So
wow.
There you go.
That's right. I've heard there's I think another band called Frantic City too. I think maybe two then. Wow.
Okay, look at that. Okay.
There you go.
Tell me about the Dave Rave conspiracy.
Okay, well, when I left the band in 1989, I was fooling around in the studio, and Hamilton was a really small city at that time. It still is, but it was really small then. And basically, I went in the studio. I met this guy named Gary Pig Gold, who was legendary writer, and I had a couple of tunes that I tried to bring into Teenage Head, but I realized the energy at the end of my tenure with Teenage Head was starting to wane. So after we did Legendary Guitar, I think we were just burned out, to be honest. Yeah, the band was burned out, and we worked so hard between 85 and 89. So there was a thing called the New Music Seminar in New York, and I had recorded a couple of tunes. And I played them to Gary, and Gary liked them, and he added a whole bunch of stuff to it. And we did this track called Farmer Needs Rain. It was a really fun little weird tune that I had never tried before. So when we were at the New Music Seminar in '89, a guy who was a friend of Gary's called him up, found him. We were at the hotel, we were at the Edison, and said, "Hey, would you ever want to live in New York?" And I never thought of that in my life. It was a dream, but it was. And so he goes, a friend of his needs somebody to sublet it. And then when we found out the price was like $400 a month, I went, oh my God, that's affordable. It's cheaper than what I'm paying in Toronto.
Right.
So we moved there, and now that we were there, we got this guy from Toronto who was a band called Sharkskin, who had produced Shadowy Many and the Shadowy Planet.
From the Odds, right? I feel like Sharkskin, is that an offshoot of the Odds?
That's no, you're thinking of the West Coast.
Okay, there's a difference.
This was Toronto, but I know, but they agree.
The Shadowy Many, shout out to the kids in the hall.
Yeah, so his name was Coyote Shivers. So he had produced a song by them, and he ended up coming to New York. And then we thought, let's get a band together because we're all here, us expats.
Right.
And we tried to find who was going to be in the band. And Washington Squares were really popular at the time in Toronto. And we were down in Toronto, and Gary said, Lauren, the bass player, plays bass. So we went and saw her play, and we said, hey, would you play bass on this track we're doing? And she said, sure. She was really nice. And then we said, we need a drummer. And the drummer was Billy Ficca from television. And we said, would you want to play Bill on drums? And Bill said, yeah, sure. No problem. And then we realized this could be a band. And so in 1990, just as the Gulf War was starting, we started this little band called The Conspiracy. Coyote gave it the name Conspiracy because in 1990, the whole time the Bush was in power, there was a lot of conspiracy going on. Not like it is now, but different. But it was
senior,
more,
you mean?
Yeah, but it was Gulf War conspiracy.
Right.
So he named it The Conspiracy, and then we just started. I was living in New York now, and we just started playing in New York and touring in the States. And we put out an album called Valentino's Pirates, which is this song Patty Rock, and then we did another album actually after that, and that lasted. We lasted till '94. We played all over New York.
Conspiracy.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Okay, I'm going to roll right into another one here. I want to hear a little more Dave Rave Conspiracy.
Yeah, it was a cool band. Billy was great, and I became friends with the television group. Yeah,
so he passed away recently.
Jesse Tommy, yeah.
And I revisited Marquee Moon, and I can't get enough of it, man.
Like a great record.
What a great record! It's, my only complaint is it's too short. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, let's listen to a little bit of this.
Oh my God, the Russian. We went to Russia. Yeah, way of the world. Yeah,
way of the world.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Standing alone.
Conspiracy.
Yeah, that was my first record ever cut in New York City. We cut it at the RCA Studios, and Gary remembers that they were changing it to BMG. Just as we was the last day with RCA, they were going to bringing the BMG letters on
That's
to replace it. It was sort of cool.
Very cool,
Amazing.
man. So what are you up to these days? So obviously the 50th anniversary coming up of you getting Shakers back together. What's going on?
Well, what's happened with me is that when I went to New York, I was very influenced by, believe it or not, of all people. After we did the Conspiracy, then me and Lauren had a duo called Agnelli Rave, and then when that ended, I got into this jazz period, which was fun because New York's got all these jazz people. I met this guy named Martin McCarran, went really cool. We did a bunch of records, 3 records, all on bongo beat. And then I did some solo records here with Jamie Vernon from Bullseye. And it's funny because there's so much stuff that happens you just forget. You want to, not to shrink it down, but I did a couple albums. He reissued my Valentino's Russian record. This album came out only in Russia, remember? And
Valentino's Pirates.
Yeah. And so I mean, there's people I know who collect copies of this record. They go to Russia and they find people. Like there's this guy said, I bought 6 copies of it from people in Russia. And okay, whatever. But
and that's
anyhow,
like when the curtain was just coming down. Like
yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's why it just happened. I remember when the guy went up to us, he saw us playing. He goes, because he had just put Paul McCartney's record out. And he goes, I like you. You guys, Dave Rave. You play a folk rock sound. So we brought him this record. He said, we got to come over to Russia, which we did. The video from that's from Russia. And so he said, but we were going to call ourselves The Conspiracy. But he said, no, group. So
the Dave Rave group.
That's why it became the group. There's no group, no conspiracy in Russia. It's just like today, right? But anyhow, so we did that. So as time went along, I worked with Jamie and then and Lisa Miller, and of course I was working with Nancy here in Toronto, and we were doing the Agnelli and Rave stuff in Conspiracy. Then I made solo records, and then I was asked to come to go to Minnesota. I met this guy, and I was doing a show from Minneapolis, and he said, I would love for you to come to Minnesota. I'll play drums for you. And I started a whole career in Minnesota. I got a whole career, 7 albums. I'm on album number 8. We just had a single called Learjet that got played around the world. It's a really cool song.
So there's let me get this right, man. We got Prince, we got Bob Dylan, and we got Dave Rave. These Minnesota icons.
I just got back. Now here's the crazy thing, that it's insane. I remember one time I was at REM show, and a friend of mine, Mary Lou Kylis, was a big fan of them, and so we go see REM. They're top. They're doing Losing My Religion, and I remember we enjoy the show. 2 months later, Mary Lou messaged me. He goes, "Hey, Dave, Pete Buck's playing with his band, the -5, at the smaller room." Okay, so we go down, we watch it. Then 2 months later, she goes, Pete Buck's back in town. He's got this band called the Baseball Project. Him and Steve Wynn. Okay, we go down to that. Then another 2 weeks later, 2 months later, another Pete Buck band comes in. And I went, how many bands does Pete Buck have? So finally I ask him, I go, what's going on? When we go backstage, and he goes, it's America, man. We just keep playing. And he influenced me. He goes, don't stop playing. Right. REM's that's the big band.
That's the moneymaker.
Yeah, and I do everything I want in between.
Right.
And it influenced me. Honest to God.
You're doing that too. Okay.
That was my
Ron
influence.
Hawkins does that, right? Like he's got Lowest of the Low, and that's kind of the moneymaker. But he's got the Do Good Assassins and the Nails and the whatever, solo stuff, all this other stuff on the side.
That was sort of influence. It was Pete.
Chris Murphy's doing this too.
Yeah,
he's in
that's
100
right.
bands.
Yeah, well, I didn't plan it that way. So Pete Buck just said to me, I say yes. He goes, when something comes, so him and Scott McCoy do this. So it influenced me. I went, okay, then I'll do that too. Why not? If something comes up. So
right.
I went to and in Minneapolis, everybody does it. They all got different bands. I play with a guy named Rich Mattson, who has the North Stars. I met different people. Yeah, I became so now over the last 15 years, I'm part of the Minnesota sound.
I had no idea. Like
Yeah.
you never know until you ask what's going on.
So we just made a single last year. We put an album called, I'll get you a copy of it, called Seven, and we had a song
It's
called
also a
Learjet.
Prince song, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's the 7th album. So us, it's Minnesota. They got that weird sense of humor.
Sure, gotcha.
But I love playing the Governors. It's now one of my most favorite things to do, and I love touring in Minnesota, and I love going. The guys treat me like a king. Craig and Rich and all the musicians there, they've been really, really good. I got to know Gary from the Jayhawks, who just, who now lives in Canada, Montreal, and it's good.
Life is good for you.
And now following that project, I've learned that one of the things that we can do and the experience that we have, you got to mentor. So when you see somebody for about 10 years, I mentored a young lady named Haley Rose, who was a wonderful singer, very Aretha Franklin. And I thought, Hamilton's more of a punk town, and blues, but not R&B. So I did a whole thing with her for 10 years, up to the COVID. And then I met another young fella named Evan Rotella, who's very Americana, which I've never done neither.
Right.
And I like to do things I've never done. So young Evan and I wrote together, and he made an album, and we did a tune, and now I'm going to be playing Cameron House next week, tomorrow.
Amazing.
Tomorrow? Yeah, Tuesday.
Tomorrow's Tuesday.
Yeah, with Evan. I brought you a CD.
Okay.
And Evan's a young lad who's 18, and now Tom Wilson and Steve Kane, they've all started hearing about him. What makes him unique is that a lot of 18-year-olds don't like John Prine and Steve Earle and Bruce Springsteen, and he's for 18-year-old, he's already been writing for 10 years.
Wow.
So he's actually really not 18 in music literally.
Right.
So I wrote a tune for his album, and that's been really fun. So he's getting his first break.
That's tomorrow night at the Cameron House.
Yeah, and he's doing all month. He's going to do one with Basil on Thursday, then one the week after mine, and then he's going to have Astrid Young do it. So I said I want to be part of that, and because you got to mentor, you got to
speaking of mentoring,
pass the word on,
Okay, so let me play on our way out here. Let me play a song and just get the story here. And I got to say, I thoroughly enjoyed this.
It's
Dave
fun,
Rave,
isn't it?
It was fun. What a deep dive, and just so fascinating. And I got to get you that lasagna from Palma Pasta.
Yeah.
And we got to take a picture by the tree before you drive back to the Hammer here. But I got to ask you about this.
Oh, the Truths.
The Truths.
Yeah, I wrote this song with them.
I know. That's why I'm playing
I forgot about that. Yeah.
I'm here to remind you about your life. So get a little taste of
I
this.
like this song. Jack Douglas produced this. Oh yeah, I love those boys. They've helped me a lot. They've done Jack particularly. Oh, I got an album I did with them.
If you wait,
I haven't heard this for a long time.
that's all you can do. My mistake was I thought more of you. If you find yourself beside me, looking for some fate,
Wow.
I can't say that a word is safe when I'm on my way
Yeah.
to another lonely place.
So you co-wrote this.
Yeah.
Okay, good for you, man. Work of the Truths, man. That's a big fucking deal.
Yeah, when they just started, and they were just like, again, talk about mentor. I knew Vic in his Jack Siprick, the bass player, his dad, when we used to play in Halifax, and he would always be talking about his son's band before they were called the Shrews, and when they came here, just around the time of 9/11 happened, they blew me away how good they were, but they still didn't have a sound yet. They just had a few originals. So I said, let's go write, man. And this was the first one we wrote together. And they didn't put on the first album because I don't think they were at that place yet.
Right.
It was more suitable for the second record.
Well, we're going back a few years now, but when Paulie Morris, who was the man who helped build the White House of Rock at Hits 97.7 in St. Catharines.
I remember Paul,
He helped, he was playing a lot of trues before anybody else in this country.
That's
like
right.
He jumped on that early, and he's quite proud of
helping them get going.
Helping the trues get going by playing them on Hits 97.7.
Yeah, you know what? During the pandemic, here's another little project I did.
Yeah.
I did a thing called Dave, Rave, and the Second Responders. And we got together, just a little low-key project, and it was me and Jack, the bass player, because we both knew if we didn't do it, we'd probably die from something, alcohol, drugs, or something.
Right.
We had to play and work, and we both did it with my cousin from the Shakers and a guitar player, Mark Foley. We had a big studio available that Glenn Marshall had in Hamilton. It was a big called the Cotton Factory, which they put shows on, but it was empty. So we were safe. We felt, okay, we're safe. And Jack's one of my favorite people. And we lived, thankfully. I'll get you a copy of that. We call it the Second Responders because we knew we're not the first responders. Don't call us.
Right.
Don't call musicians for the first. We might take a while to get there. Right? You know?
Second Responders, good name.
We're the second responders, you know?
Amazing, man. Amazing.
Thank you for playing that. I haven't heard that for a while. It's nice.
Yeah, it was very nice, and I knew you had a writing credit on it, so I said, let me find out about what the hell Dave Rave was doing with the Trues. But man, this 50th anniversary thing you got going on with Teenage Head fucking sounds cool, and this chat was amazing. And again, you got to come back, man. You were great. I'd kick out the jams with you.
Oh, it's fun, man. You know, it's really funny because I love it because it's a mosaic, and you can try to do what's the word called, a logical way to it, but there's really no logic to it.
Yeah.
Music has just always been like that. It's people who connect and getting along. You know, like we go, hey, you know, that's what I love about music. It's magical, you know.
Do you think Teenage Head got their just desserts? They got the flowers they deserve?
Well, you know what? It was a great band. The music has lasted, and I always say if you can make any music that lasts, when you think of all the music that's been out there in the world, if it lasts, then you've done your job. If somebody says to you, like all this beautiful reaction, I think it makes Steve happy, and I know Gordon, Frank, up in. I don't know if Frank's in heaven, but he's somewhere close to it. Maybe they're all eating probably chark. There may be, what do you call it, where you go to get the barbecue sauce? They're more in that area. Wherever that is, you know, the ZZ Top bass players there, and you know, all those guys are all there. Maybe Sid Vicious is probably. That's where
you want to go, right?
Oh yeah, you want to go there. You don't want to go on the plane with you want to go on the bad plane. You know, it's more fun, man. So wherever those guys are, I know that they're looking after us, and you know, and it's a beautiful thing, you know.
And that brings us to the end of our 1427th show. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky. I'm at Toronto Mike. You're at Dave Rave on the app formerly known as Twitter, but is there anywhere else you want to send people to find out what's going on with you?
You know what? I'm just at Facebook and on Instagram, you know, Dave Rave at Insta, and also Dave Rave. I got the page, and I also got my own thing. So you can come there. You know, I'm always posting, taking pictures of people in action.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, thank you.
And much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery. That's Palma Pasta. That's Recycle My Electronics.
Nancy Malik.
Nancy Malik. We couldn't have done this without Nancy Malik.
Yep.
Raymond James Canada and Ridley Funeral Home. See you all tomorrow when I'm dropping the FOTM KOTJ episode. Cheesiest love songs just in time for Valentine's Day. See you all then. Woohoo!
'Cause I know that's true, yes I do. I know it's true, yeah. I know it's true. How about you? Oh, they're picking up trash and they're putting down roads. And they're brokering stocks, the class struggle explodes. And I'll play this guitar just the best that I can. Well, maybe I'm not, and maybe I am. Who gives a damn? Because everything is coming up rosy and green. Yeah, the wind is cold, but the smell of snow warms me today. And you
Your smile is fine and it's just like mine, and it won't go away, 'cause everything is rosy and gray. Well, I've kissed you in France and I've kissed you in Spain, and I've kissed you in places I better not name, and I've seen the sun go down on Sacré-Cœur, but I